speaking with some guest speakings and a special screening of a new documentary from Mark Sharman. So if you can get along to that, that would be great as well. Okay, where does that take us? Let's talk about gender. And of course, the CAS report is out today. So this is the independent review of gender identity services for children and young people, headed up by Dr. Hilary Cass. This has come about because of the criticism of the way that the NHS has been dealing with this issue. Of course, that criticism has resulted in the closure of the Gender Identity Development Service, as we reported on the last news programme that I was on. I think this was on Friday. But we did make the point on Friday that 2 new hubs have already been established in order to continue this work. But anyway, coming back to the CAS report itself, let's look at the CAS review itself. Let's look at the report and its key findings. They say, or she says, there is no simple explanation for the increase in the numbers of predominantly young people and young adults that have a trans or gender diverse identity. Well, I'm going to question that a little bit later on, but we'll run through the other key findings first. There are conflicting views about the clinical approach, with expectations of care at times being far from usual clinical practice. An appraisal of international guidelines for care and treatment of children and young people with gender incongruence found that no single guideline could be applied in its entirety to the NHS in England. They also said that while a considerable amount of research has been published in this field, systematic evidence reviews demonstrated poor quality of the published studies. In other words, they're going ahead with treatment despite the lack of evidence. You may see parallels with COVID here, but anyway, it goes on to say the rationale for early puberty suppression remains unclear, with weak evidence regarding the impact on gender dysphoria, mental or psychological health. The effect on cognitive and psychosexual development remains unknown. Again, similar to COVID, let's just go ahead with the policy. Let's not worry about what the effect of jabs or the effect of lockdowns might be on people. The use of masculinizing or feminizing hormones in those under the age of 18 also presents many unknowns, despite their long-standing use in the adult transgender population. That's what they were saying. So the next thing is clinicians are unable to determine with any certainty which children and young people will go on to have an enduring trans identity. And that, of course, comes back to the point that I was making also on Friday with the scientific paper showing that, in fact, the vast majority of youngsters lose this uncertainty about their gender as they grow up. But anyway, coming back to this issue of there is no simple explanation for the increase in the numbers of predominantly young people and young adults who have a trans or gender diverse identity, I would say there is a very simple explanation for this, and it derives from the policy which is being pushed from the World Health Organization and national government. So let's bring the World Health Organization on screen first. And of course, the World Health Organization is promoting the idea of gender-affirming care. And this is being promoted in schools through the relationships and sexual health education classes. And of course, these classes, although they're guided by a so-called national curriculum, what's actually taught in them is left up to the schools. And quite often the schools in the UK, at least, don't feel equipped to deal with these issues themselves. So they bring third parties into the schools to run this training. And it might be organisations like Mermaids, for example. Now, Mermaids is currently under investigation by the Charities Commission. That investigation's been running for well over a year now. But I just wanted to highlight, just as a throwaway comment here, the choice of colours on their website, because this looks to me like a common purpose-based organisation. And I would suggest that a lot of this, the push for this ideology is coming from those kinds of circles. So the World Health Organization, common purpose-derived NGOs and charities, and also the government, and not just the domestic government either, because there's a press release from the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office promoting and protecting the rights of LGBT plus people, Programme Summary 2022 to 2023. This was published in March 23. And let's just look at their objectives. The UK is a champion for the human rights of LGBT plus people around the world. We support and advocate for the rights of all people, irrespective of their sexual orientation or gender identity, to live with dignity, free from prejudice, violence or discrimination, they say. Our objectives are to improve the lives of LGBT plus people through, first of all, improving institutional protection against discrimination, including through removing or amending discriminatory laws, policies and practices. Remember, this is Foreign Office policy. This is what they're pushing for in other countries. Never mind what's going on in the UK. Also reducing hate speech, violence or harassment based on discrimination. But the key one is the last one, which is all about improving access to services. And in other words, they want to replicate the types of services that we've seen being applied to children in the UK in other countries as well. And just to end this segment before I see if either of our other contributors want to comment on this, I just want to show an example of how this is not just a UK thing. This is international. And so this is Dr. Phil, as he's known, Dr. Phil McGraw in the United States, talking about this.
States across the country have passed laws banning gender-affirming care on minors. Our next guest is a queer woman who is married to a trans man. When Jamie Reed worked as a caseworker at the Transgender Center at St. Louis Children's Hospital, she thought she was saving trans kids' lives. But she claims what she witnessed there was so morally and medically appalling that she had no choice but to expose what was really going on.
I was working in a pediatric gender center for 4.5 years, primarily responsible for patient intakes. The center followed this message that transition would solve everything, that it would solve a child's mental health problems. There were very few written protocols or guidelines. One of the providers even said we were flying the plane as we built it.
So since that is also recognised in this report, that seems to be a policy that's international. Vanessa, very briefly, have you got any thoughts on this?
No, I mean, it's just horrifying. I mean, that comment, flying the plane while you're still building it, I think that applies to so much of the policy that is coming through in the West and that is going to have a devastating effect in the future upon all generations, from elderly to future generations.
Yes, indeed. Charles, what are your thoughts?
Well, many, I think, and not good ones, but it shows, propaganda and indoctrination works. This stuff has been in the public eye, it's in schools. So to suggest at the outset that it doesn't seem to be clear why there's been an uptake or an increased interest in it I think that's disingenuous. And I think also targeting the policy allows those that are in the business of actually assisting people to either make transitions, whether chemically or surgically, it fails to scrutinise them. Questions particularly of the National Health Service and of all those other practitioners who are doing this stuff. They deserve far more attention than they're getting, I think.